This is episode 25 of the No Be Yet podcast. I'm recording this on August 18th at 7:51 p.m. Ooh, it's been a while since I did one of these. The last one I see is on July 20th. So it's been like a month since I did this. And the past month, I've just been really busy. Oh, it's been a month that I can't even pronounce, but it's been a month and I've been really busy in the past month. A lot of it was just centered on project work, which I'm trying to work on a product launch that we're trying to launch in September. I'm leading the engineering side. So a lot of work on that side. And since I am pretty much the only backend engineer, just a lot of code that needs to be written and just a lot of decisions that have to be made. But just a lot of work. And I guess on top of that work, I had to go to Palo Alto for a work trip for like 2 weeks. So that kind of ate into my discipline, I will admit, for this podcast. I feel like my discipline for this podcast already wasn't that high, given I was balancing a lot of things, work, gym, friends, family, and I guess podcasts, which I guess doesn't sound like much, but I guess for me, when I think about a day-to-day, it feels like a lot. So now I'm slowly trying to get back in the hang of podcasting and maybe hopefully writing, which I haven't done in a while. But since I haven't done one of these in a while, I want to go over 3 things that I'm thinking about, or I have been thinking about in the past month. And this will incorporate a lot from what I've done from my trip to Palo Alto. So the trip to Palo Alto was a week. It was originally supposed to be a week. And the purpose of the trip was to grind with the team, who were all like working in separate locations. So to work with the team in one area and try to put out a finished product, or at least a finished MVP by the end of the week. And we're also planning that at the end of the week, we would also present to the CEO of the company that I work at, which, if you don't know, is Elon. So the plan was to present to Elon at the end of the week after we did all this work. Lo and behold, when it came to Friday and we were supposed to present, turns out he's a really busy person and we didn't get to present. So the meeting got pushed to Monday, and hence I stayed another, I guess, half week for that meeting, which fortunately took place, and I didn't have to stay longer because Palo Alto, not that fun. Anyways, so it was just a lot of work for that week leading up to the meeting with Elon and, of course, some other executive management on the company that I work at. So given we were all together, we just spent a lot of time just making decisions and just working. I think on a daily basis, I probably spent like 12 hours in the office every day. And when I'm not in the office, I'm just thinking about what else to work on, decisions that I personally have to make that will accelerate myself forward. So just a lot of hours in the week spent towards work, which of course is not atypical of me. Now, it was actually pretty cool. There was a couple of people from London who flew over to Palo Alto to work. And in total, the team was maybe, I want to say like 4 or 5 people who are actually contributing. Me and one other guy from London who are basically the only engineers working on this, aside from some interns. And then one PM, who I guess is my manager. And we had an external consultant who also came in and flew over from Britain. And the first lesson that I want to talk about, or the first thing I was thinking a lot about, was the value of charisma. This external consultant we're working with him because he is a domain expert in this area of the project. He worked extensively with a lot of different enterprise clients in this area and has a lot of expertise in that. Now, talking with him, it was actually really cool to work with him. It was really cool to see what a serial entrepreneur is like. So he's fairly young, he's 29, and he's a serial entrepreneur. He already started various companies. He started his first one at like 16 or 17 or something, very young, and just been doing businesses his entire life up to this point since then. He didn't go to university and just started and sold businesses. And from starting and selling businesses, he gained a lot of knowledge in a lot of different fields, and also just met a lot of very cool people in these different fields. And of course, he's very successful. So why I was thinking a lot about charisma was because when talking to him, it was just really fun to work with him. And when talking to him, you could kind of tell that he's excited and how he acts or how he carries himself just kind of draws people in, or at least drawed me in to want to actually work with him more. And I thought about why. Why was that? Why was this external consultant who I never met in person, who did not work at the company I was working at, who I only really met online like a couple months ago, why is it that the first week that I met him, or pretty much the first day that I met him, it was like a immediate connection of, oh my God, it's so easy to work with him. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who thinks this. I'm sure other people on my team think this as well. So why is it that someone could just come in who is not associated with any of us and just be a joy to work with, and once he's out of the office, it feels like, damn, like I wish he was still here and we could still kind of keep working together. And I was trying to break this down, like, how is he charismatic? Or like, what are the behavior traits that he shows that he's charismatic? And maybe if I put it in my nerdy way, how do I operationalize charisma? One immediate thing that pops into my mind is how he carries himself. And he carries himself in a very laid back, he's very informal, and he shoots from the hip a lot. And for me, this is kind of like a breath of fresh air. And while I instinctually know this, I always approach businesses like a business, like something that's very professional. And I don't know whether it's from like my Chinese upbringing or like internships in big tech or like working in a trading firm that was much more vertical and or hierarchical and much more formal. It's just a breath of fresh air when interacting with someone who's very informal and who's just very chill, very laid back, and is just excited to work on something. It kind of just shatters that idea that a business is like this formal arrangement in which people sign contracts to work together, and they sign contracts with clients to give them products, and the clients give them money. It breaks that conception that I have that a business is something that's super formal and is out of my reach. Right? Because for me to start a business, I feel like I would need to sign a lot of documents and do a lot of things and enter a lot of legal agreements, and which that is true. A lot of it doesn't have to be done with like the formal arrangements that I often see myself picturing that are from like the classic banking movies. Like ignore the Wolf of Wall Streets and ignore the Big Shorts and stuff like that. But like the movies that exhibit the stereotypical business setting, like people in suits and people talking formally and people typing like very formal emails, like everything like that. Like all of that gets shattered when working with the external consultant. And I realized that that is like one of the ways that he but he is very charismatic. That informality, at least for me, makes me feel like he's just like a friend or like an acquaintance. And naturally, with friends and acquaintances, I want to talk to them. I want to interact with them. And maybe I want to work with them. And this is what he feels like. He doesn't feel like a coworker, but he feels like a friend. So that is like one area in which he feels very like charismatic. Now, the second one is like we brought him in for a reason. And we brought him in because he's very knowledgeable, of course. And in person, he is very knowledgeable. And the way he delivers it, he's also like a very no bullshit kind of person. And this feels great because in addition to that very laid back kind of informal feeling, you also know that what he's saying is at least what he believes is the truth, and it's actually probably pretty accurate in terms of what the truth actually is or what reality actually is. So he just kind of shoots straight. And when we have discussions about product or the direction in which we want to take the product in, you don't have to second think what his opinions are. He just immediately tells you, like, this is kind of what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? Or he just asks you, what are you thinking? And then after you tell him, this is what I'm thinking, and you kind of get to talk it out. And I think that's a very, like, easy thing to do. But I think for me, I just never thought about it. But it's good to, like, identify it and pinpoint it down of that is what his behavior or his kind of interaction is kind of what no bullshit is. And it is what, like, that knowledgeableness, the trustworthiness feels like. I remember there was this meeting in which, leading up to the Elon meeting, we met with the head of product, And we were just talking about we were talking about our product, and we are talking about the decision we want to go. And the head of product had another idea in which he wanted to take it in addition. And the external consultant just kind of brought it up in the meeting and was just actively disagreeing with the head of product, which of course is kind of strange to think about because we're all working at the same company, except him. We're also talking to the head of product, who is like right under Milan. So we're not talking to like a random person, and all of us are like kind of nodding our heads and like going along, while he's just like, no, like I don't think that will work. And he's very vocal about it. So whether or not he's right or the head of product right or whoever's right or whoever's wrong, because people, it's not binary, he at least said his opinion and it's out there. And it builds trust that he is saying what he believes in and that he's not really hiding anything. Even if he is, maybe, but at least it feels like he's not hiding something. That in itself is very valuable. So to distill these two things, a very laid back and informalness and kind of his knowledgeableness and the no bullshit approach, just makes him really fun to work with. And how he talks and how he interacts, it feels like he draws from his experiences, what he says and how he says it, and just how he behaves, just makes those two things conjoin to become very fun. He becomes a very fun person to talk to, like on a casual basis, and of course to also then work with on a more, I guess, not even professional basis, because he's not even that professional. So it just makes it very fluid between talking about random bullshit and just shooting our shit to working, and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I think that is kind of what charisma is like. And this kind of leads to the second point that I was thinking a lot about, is that a business is very much just like a school project. The mental block I had for a lot of, I guess, my early career, and even now, in which is getting a little bit broken, is that I always saw a business as something that's super professional, like I said earlier. And it feels something that's a little bit out of reach. But from talking with him and doing the project I'm working on and leading it, I kind of realized that a business is very much just a school project, or like a personal project, or whatever project that you want to pursue willingly. Like, in both instances, a school project and a business project all starts with some motivation. Like, there's some motivation in which drives me to want to pursue a school project, which in that setting is I want good grades, I want it for my portfolio, and I'm also hopefully interested in it. And a work project is also very similar. I want similar things out of it. But instead of grades, of course, it's money and performance. I might get promoted. And of course, there's also interest. Like, I myself am interested in this problem I'm solving or in this product I'm building. And teammates is another factor. So ignoring all like the stupid scoping of like coworkers as like a fully professional thing that I had a mental block earlier, if I really think about it, coworkers are pretty much just people that you work with that are no different from people in a school project, because they're just also people that you work with on the same team. And these people could be friends, acquaintances, or whatever. But it doesn't have to be like a fully professional thing. I don't have to be so uptight about it, right? These people are just people in the end, and they probably just want to have fun and do things they're interested in after all. So because of this, and because of like this new scoping, in work, it's just another place where I can just shoot my shit and work on something that is cool, right? It's similar to a school project. I just gotta shoot my shit and work on something that's cool. Like, whether it be like a science project or a physics experiment or like a machine learning project I had to do for computer science. It's just another cool project, right? And between like the technical jargon and between the, oh shoot, we have to talk about this requirement, you're just kind of talking shit, and you're just talking about stuff, right? You're just talking about life, you're talking about travel, you're talking about friends, you're talking about like people that you're seeing or you're dating or whatever. Like, it's just chill, right? And that's what a work project is like. It's like working on a school project in that sense. Like, your teammates are just people that you get to work with. And the other part of the formality for a work project or work in general that I couldn't get over, that now I'm getting over, is legal and safety. So, of course, in work, there are other things that we have to think about. Like, there's lawyers involved, of course. There's law involved when working in a large-scale company. There are processes that must be followed. And I think a better way to think of these things is thinking of them as constraints that a professor gives you when being given a work project, or when given a school project, sorry. And why scoping it this way, at least for me, I find it really pleasant and find it much easier to operate under, is that the root of these constraints are just constraints that are not under my control. I can't determine what requirements and constraints the professor gives me, or specifically, I can't determine the constraints the professor gives me. Similarly, I can't determine the constraints a lawyer gives me, right? Maybe I could finesse a little bit with the lawyer or the professor, but in the end, there are still hard constraints that I must abide under to push out my project. An example in school for like constraints are like deadlines, but also a good one that I think about was during a school project in which I had to build a robot from equipment from scratch. One constraint was we could not spend more than $200 on the robot. That was a hard constraint that we had to follow under. Similarly, in the current project I'm working on, one hard constraint is we cannot run an open auction. That requires auction licenses, in which we don't have. Therefore, we must run some variation of a closed auction if we want to go down that route. So that's like, in a similar sense, a constraint that I have no control over that we must design around. Now, the fourth aspect of this is in terms of performance. In a school project, performance is defined by the mark that's given by the professor. And very similarly, a work project is the revenue that's determined by the customer. In this very sense, it's still some like external agent that bestows upon you something that you want, the school project being marks and revenue or profit being in terms of a work project. And in this sense, it just kind of draws the parallels between work or a work project, which seems so far away and seems something that's very formal and that like formal adults do, to something that I did a lot as a kid, like in middle school and high school and university, or even in like my personal project that I pursued before. It breaks that barrier to make things a little bit more relatable and makes things feel a little bit more real. And it gives me more confidence that I could actually do the work project that I'm pursuing. And it feels like I'm not like an idiot running around headless, which oftentimes, if I'm being honest, feels like it when I'm in these settings of work. Now, of course, with this project specifically, there was a peak in it for it to actually launch, is getting the approval from Elon. So the trip that I was on capped off with a meeting with the big dude. And I kind of want to take a moment to think back to that meeting, because this is definitely something that I want to record myself saying, or at least writing or recording down. But I feel like this feeling will start to lose from my memory as time goes on. So I really want to kind of, while I'm still in the moment, like maybe like a week and a half away from when I saw him, I still kind of want to recall that time and try to remember what it felt like. So we waited for the meeting for a long time. The meeting was supposed to be at, I believe it was like 7 or 8, but it was pushed back to 11 or midnight, something like that. It was pushed back for a long time. And when we finally went into the meeting room, it was very surreal seeing him just sit there. And he was just sitting there on his phone. And as I kind of plopped myself down in the chair, I remember just looking at him and then looking at my computer. And I was kind of scared looking at him. And eventually, over time, as he was still on his phone doing whatever he needs to do, I eventually built the courage slowly to start kind of taking longer glances or longer peeks at him. And it's a very surreal experience, because while I instinctually know people are just people in the end, and everyone is like a person in the end, it's hard to apply that principle to someone who's been so public and who's been so impactful across the world. I mean, he's like the richest person on earth, for God's sake. So seeing that in person was very surreal, especially when you think about all the businesses he's run, all the controversies he's been in, the public eye, all the news articles that I've read, or social media posts, or kind of the adoration from my friends or some friends of him, or some vitriol of some friends of him as well. It's just very surreal seeing that in the flesh, right? And connecting that, the image or the symbolism or what he represents that people have, that they kind of overlay on him, and distill that into a biological, a real person. So the first like 10 or 20 minutes, it was very surreal. Just kind of like seeing him sit there and seeing him just chilling like on his phone. And then slowly as the meeting started, it's kind of surreal hearing him talk, because now I heard all the podcasts he was on or the interviews he gave, and now I'm hearing his voice in real life. So it's just like another instance of, yeah, he's a real person, and this is not like some sort of character that is out of reach. Like it's very much a real person that you could talk to and you could interact with. And the meeting itself it started pretty tense, I felt like. A lot of us haven't met him before, and of course the few people who have met him before are thinking, probably, I actually don't know, but are probably really tense of, holy shit, I need to present to him, I need to present what I'm working on, and hopefully he doesn't like say it's stupid. So it started very tense, but I feel like as the meeting went on, it went a little bit more chill. Throughout the meeting, he laughs a good bit. He has kind of like this, I don't really know if it's a belly laugh or anything like that. And honestly, I don't recall that much. But I do remember the laugh just being, it felt really genuine. It reminded me the value of doing things that you enjoyed, at least doing things, or committing yourself in doing things, or committing yourself to things in which you could find fun out of, you could find enjoyment out of, and how much lighter it makes your day, or how much lighter it makes other people feel. And he actually had some laughs throughout the course of the meeting, or a good bit, and it made the meeting a little bit more lighthearted. It made me want to laugh a bit. It made me want to smile, and made me want to live in the moment a bit more. So I think that's just a reminder of the laid backness, the charisma that I thought about earlier with the external consultant, but now of course with the big dog. So yeah, being a little bit more playful, enjoying the time more, even if we are talking about very serious things. And when we actually started digging into the projects and what we're working on and the metrics that are very important to our user base, now I saw what people described in interviews and in biographies of what he's really good at. And what he's really good at is identifying or knowing what is important and using all his leverage in that specific thing. One example I heard in a podcast before, or that I knew before, was, for example, his time at SpaceX. In the early days of SpaceX, the single point of leverage that would determine SpaceX's success or failure was launching a rocket. So he put all his money and all his manpower and all his proficiency in him and his hires into launching a rocket. Tesla was the same thing. To determine the fate of Tesla, it was whether or not they could break some sort of like production barrier. Let's say it was like 1,000 cars per day. So he put all his effort, all his money, all his talent into solving that one aspect, whether or not they could build or manufacture 1,000 Teslas per day. And as controversial as this is also similar in the past presidential election. A big part of the presidential election, no matter what you think about it, was distilled to the state of Pennsylvania, I believe. Pennsylvania was a really big swing state. And the winner of that swing state would largely determine whoever won the presidency. And Elon clearly identified this was the case and spent like 200 or 300 million campaigning specifically in Pennsylvania. It's all of this is identifying the highest point of leverage and yanking on it repeatedly and putting all your ability in that place. in terms of my meeting, how that kind of distilled down was within our company, there are like a few metrics that are very important. There is one metric that's the most important out of all. So when we were presenting our kind of projects that we were working on, his question was, does this improve that metric? Yes or no? And if it does, how much? So he just distilled our entire project and all the complexities as the algorithm. And one engineer was actually trying to describe his algorithm and trying to present his algorithm to Elon. And Elon just basically said, I don't know what's going on, but the main question is, does this improve this metric? Right? So if you could distill down this entire project or our entire work into this one metric, it makes it much easier to do. Of course, it's difficult to improve that metric. I know what it is, and it's just hard. But at least it removes all the bullshit that's surrounding it. It removes all the hullabaloo around it and makes it specifically a yes or no question of, does this improve this metric? And in this sense, I feel like despite all the scary stories there could be about him, fundamentally, he is very reasonable. He's, in the end, an engineer, and engineers are very reasonable. Part of his reasons comes from his tuition and from his experiences, which is really vast, and I think there could be a lot of insights drawn from it. Now, there is one insight predominantly that was drawn from it that this point is on, is what he said throughout the course of the meeting. And as we were presenting the product, or the product I was working with, to him, he just repeatedly said, don't get reamed, don't get reamed, don't get reamed. And this basically just means just like, don't mess up. Like, don't make it such that this project fails completely, becomes like an absolutely nuclear bomb in terms of negative PR, or just like goes in the shithole. Like, just don't get reamed. And this is a reminder of Charlie Munger's maxim. He says, invert, invert, always invert. And how these two play similarly, of course, like, don't get reamed is not helpful, because then the next question is, okay, is Charlie Munger's maxim of, how do we not get reamed? Or how do we not fuck up this product launch? Or how do we not mess up what we're building? And this is where this comes in, where it's operationalizing what precautions do we have to put in place to ensure that even if our product is not launched successfully, at least it doesn't completely fail and we are like out of the game that we can't recover from. It's how do we minimize all the damages that could occur? Like anything that could sink our ship, how do we reduce that risk? And now the things that can like at least damage our ship won't destroy it, and we can at least come back from it. A analogy that he gave that I think is very valuable, that I will probably take on this product and all the other things that I launch, is, can a 14-year-old with a computer in his or her mom's basement break what you're building? And if that child can, you're doing something wrong. And this, of course, is like brilliant. And like, when I think about it now, it's so simple. And that's where beauty comes with. It's the simplicity that gives these maxims the beauty of, can a 14-year-old break it? Invert, invert, always invert, don't get reamed. If this person can break it, you're doing something wrong. And now when I think about the system I'm building, I'm always thinking, can a 14-year-old break it? And what do we have to do to ensure that it can't be broken in that way? So as long as we're building a product, at least it won't fail and go in the garbage can, and we can recover from it. This actually then leads me to another thought that I had also, that I probably also said before, and I take from other podcasts, and it's the concept of multiplying by zero. So it's known, of course, that if you multiply by any number, you'll get usually a bigger number, assuming it's more than one. But you'll get a bigger number, and at least it's a number that you could keep multiplying, and it'll get bigger, or at least it won't take you out of the game. So let's say you do something like, let's say you work out and that's like a 1.1 multiplier. Or let's say you fuck up and that's like a 0.5 multiplier. Either way, when you multiply a lot of numbers, it's not zero. And it compounds over time. Like when you multiply 2 by 2 by 2 by 2, the increment jumps you get becomes larger and larger and larger every single time. However, among all the numbers that you multiply, you must not multiply by zero. Because once you multiply by zero, it doesn't matter what other number you multiply with, the product will always be 0. And this comes back to this idea of don't get reamed, or of Charlie Munger's invert, invert, always invert. Do not mess up in an area in which you cannot recover from. Always play safe when it comes to sinking your ship. I think that idea is very drilled into my head now after this meeting. And even though I knew this before, I knew like the maximum of invert, invert, always invert. It never really played out, and it didn't really like seep into my head of what that actually meant and how to operationalize it. And now I get an opportunity to operationalize it. Just like that. But yeah, that was the past month and what I've been thinking of over the course of the month as I went to Palo Alto and was working on this meeting, working on the project, prepping for the meeting with Elon. And hopefully in the next month, we'll see the product launch. And I hope to take you, which is myself in the future, along this journey of releasing the product and how I'm feeling throughout this. But yeah, that has been Nobody Yet, and I'll see you next week.